I'm getting the thumbs up. I will turn the water off so you don't hear the beautiful waterfall effect back here. Usually I am the one to blame for this snow in the auditorium. This is not my fault this morning. It's chilly in here for once. We are in Luke chapter 19. Luke chapter 19. I will not be with you next Sunday. I'll be one of the ones in Panama. I don't know who. I would let Richard teach, but we don't want Richard up here for an hour to lead you through. I don't even know what you'd lead them through, Richard. You'd be all over the place. And I am glad Jim is with us today because we have a word in the text that he will straighten me up on, or straighten me out on. Luke chapter 19. We are to be here at the building at 3:30 a.m. Thank you. Let's read the text and then we'll jump in. Then Jesus entered and passed through Jericho, and behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus who was chief tax collector, and he was rich. And he sought to see Jesus, who Jesus was, but he could not because of the crowd, for he was short of stature. So he ran ahead and climbed up into the sycamore tree to see him, for he was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him, and said to him, Zacchaeus, make haste, come down, for today I must stay at your house. So he made haste and came down and received him joyfully. But when they saw it, they all complained, saying, he has gone to be guest with a man who is a sinner. Then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Lord, look, I give half my goods to the poor, and if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore fourfold. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost. Now when they heard these things, he spoke another parable, because he was near Jerusalem, and because they thought the kingdom of God would appear immediately. Therefore he said, a certain nobleman went to a far country and received for himself a kingdom and to return. So he called 10 of his servants, delivered to them 10 minas, and said to them, do business till I come. But his citizens hated him and sent a delegation after him, saying, we will not have this man to reign over us. And so it was that when he returned, having received the kingdom, he then commanded these servants to whom he had given the money to be called to him, that he might know how much every man had gained by trading. Then they came the first, saying, Master, your mina has earned 10 minas. And he said to him, well done, good servant, because you were faithful in very little, have authority over 10 cities. And the second came, saying, Master, your mina has earned you 5 minas. Likewise he said to him, you also be over 5 cities. Then another came, saying, Master, here's your mina, which I have kept and put away in a handkerchief. For I feared you, because you are an austere man. You collect what was not deposited and reap what you do not sow. And he said to him, out of your own mouth I will judge you, you wicked servant. You knew I was an austere man, collecting what I did not deposit and reaping what I did not sow. Why then did you not put my money in the bank, that at my coming I might have collected it with interest? And he said to those who stood by, take the mina from him, give it to the one who has 10 minas. But they said to him, Master, he has 10. For I say to you that everyone who has will be given, and from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. But bring those enemies of mine who did not want me to reign over them, and slay them before me. When he had said this, he went ahead, going to Jerusalem, and it came to pass, when he was drawing near to Bethphage and Bethany, at the mountain called Olivet, that he sent 2 of his disciples, saying, go into the village opposite you, and you will enter, you will find a colt tied, which no one has ever sat. Loose it and bring it here. And if anyone asks, why are you loosing it? Thus say to him, because the Lord has need of it. So those who were sent went their way and found it just as he had said to them. And they were loosing the colt. The owners said to them, why are you loosening the colt? He said, the Lord has need of it. Then they brought it to Jesus, and they threw their clothes over the colt, And they set Jesus on him. And he went, and many spread their clothes on the road, that when he was now drawing near the descent of Mount Olivet, the whole multitude of the disciples began to rejoice, praise God with a loud voice, all the mighty works they had seen, saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest." And some of the Pharisees called to him from the crowd, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." But he answered and said to them, "I tell you that if these should keep silent, the stones would immediately cry out." Now as he drew near, he saw the city and wept over it, saying, "If you had known, even you, especially this your day, the things that make you for peace, but now they are hidden from your eyes. For days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment around you, surrounding you and close you on every side, and level you and your children within you to the ground. They will not leave you one stone upon another, because you did not know the time of your visitation." Then he went to the temple and began to drive out those who bought and sold in it, saying, "It is written, my house is a house of prayer, but you make it a den of thieves." And he was teaching daily in the temple, but the chief priests, the scribes, the leaders of the people sought to destroy him, and they were unable to do anything, for all the people were very attentive to hear him. I think I've mentioned it a few times that these last few chapters, as I read them, at first glance, I'm kind of like, man, there's not a lot here. And then when I read it the second time, it seems to grow a little bit. And by the third or fourth time, it's like, wow. I want us to think about Zacchaeus for a while, because what do we know about Zacchaeus? He was a wee little man. We get so wrapped up in the childhood song or the story of Zacchaeus. There's something here that I've missed, that I did not realize until studying for today. There was a man named Zacchaeus who was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. He sought to see who Jesus was. Do you pick up what I'm saying? He didn't know Jesus. He didn't have a relationship with Jesus. He wasn't a follower of Jesus in the sense that he was not a disciple. See, all my life I had thought that he was a disciple, and he heard that Jesus was coming to town, and he jumps up in this tree. But it says he sought to see who he was. The next thing is, I think, as we go through this text, we need to understand is that I don't have any idea how big Jerusalem was at this day and age. Does anyone here have an idea from your past studies?
Past studies indicate it would have been something like between 500,000 to 1 million people in the city. I want to say I heard Lee say that once on the term he preached on Palm Sunday this year. But that would have been about the number of people in the city during Palm Sunday, which is what is described at the end of the chapter. But people were in the city for Palm Sunday, for the festival around it, not necessarily.
So Brandon's saying that he's heard Lee mention that possibly 500,000 for Palm Sunday. If we're wrong, let's blame it on Lee. It's his fault. Say it's a city the size of Tallahassee, 200,000 roughly. How would you know Jesus was even coming to town? How many of us with internet, with cell phones, with everything going on, don't know some of the festivals and some of the parades that happen downtown? I don't keep up with it. A lot of the junk I don't even want to know about. But I want you to think about just for a moment, wrap your head around, Jesus is so, I don't like the word popular, but there's so much commotion around this prophet, around this man, that they know is his route. They hear him coming to town. And it's not that Zacchaeus was a devout follower of Jesus, but he said, I want to see who he was. I want to know more about him. So he's curious. So a lot's going on. It's incredible to think about how things could be happening, and he knows. Then when Jesus comes to the point where Zacchaeus is in the tree, well, let me ask you this question. Have any of you ever climbed a tree for a parade route? Garth raised his hand. That doesn't surprise me, Garth. I'm one of those that I'm not going to climb somebody's tree. I feel backward, awkward. But this, what does that say about Zacchaeus?
Sincerity.
We emphasize him being short. It just says he's small in stature. I won't ask you to raise your hand if you're small in stature. But we've got some people in this room that are small in stature, and it don't make you a little bitty kid. I feel small sometimes when I stand beside somebody that's 6'4". But it means he's seeking. Something's different. He's got a desire. He's curious. He's curious. He's heard. And now he wants to see what it's about. What does that tell us about this Jesus? Or what does it maybe tell us about the kingdom or the church? Or what should it tell us about the church?
Should be happy and excited to come together.
Well, Don says we should be happy and excited, but should there be something drawing us to it? Should there be for the world something about what we're doing or who we are that there's an interest? Scripture tells us to be ready to give a defense. It's not that we're out beating people down or telling them they're right or wrong or going to heaven or hell, but there should be something about what we stand for that might stir up interest in the community, that might stir up interest in our workplace, within our family. Who are these people? Why are they different? Why do they think this way? Well, what happens when Jesus goes to Zacchaeus or says, Zacchaeus, come on down from there. I need to stay at your house. What's the reaction?
He's eager to come down and see it.
He's eager. We don't get a reaction whether it blew his mind, like, how did you even know my name? Because they don't have a relationship. But what's the reaction of the people? They don't call him a tax collector. I know what he was, but what does the text say? They grumbled because why Jesus was with a sinner. Besides the Pharisees being Pharisaical,
Well, he had a reputation not like a person.
I don't.
On top of the text being a sinner.
Who's okay? Tax collectors were known to be thieves. They extorted. They took more than they should have. I've confessed that I would be a good Pharisee. I can keep rules really well. Bert, you don't have that issue, do you? No, he says. But what does it say about the Pharisees? They forgot they were sinners. I have to remind myself I'm a sinner. Now that sounds kind of strange, doesn't it? I mean, I shined up pretty well this morning. I put on a good jacket. I brushed my hair for you. I brushed my teeth. I look pretty good on the outside. But you all find that funny, don't you? But I have to really remind myself, I'm still a sinner, and I'm still broken. Even though I'm serving God, and I'm following Him the best I can, I'm here to worship Him, and I've been washed clean. I need to be very careful that I'm not like the Pharisees and go, look at them hang out with that sinner because I are one. I want Jesus to hang with me, or I want to be able to hang with Jesus. So anytime we're looking at the Pharisees, and we are supposed to have standards. We're supposed to stand out, but not because of a self-righteousness, but a righteousness because of what we do and how we're different through Christ. Brandon.
Can't you also infer from this that as Christians, just as Christ was attracted versus
Most certainly. We should have such a lifestyle, such a personality, we should have something that invites the world.
Be channeling Jesus, have his charisma, charm, compassion.
We can't use a word like channeling because that's kind of the, but
Connection.
I've also shared in class many times, I would try to convert people to the church versus converting them to Jesus. And there's a huge difference. I do believe that there is one church. I believe it's the church that Christ established. I believe there's one way in it through the death, burial, and resurrection. We're not part of the denominational world, whether you like it or not. We are supposed to be separate. We are not one of many, but we are the one. But I'm not saved because I'm here this morning. I'm not saved because of this structure or our eldership. I'm saved because of the blood of Christ. And if we miss the fact that we're supposed to be conformed to Christ, as you're saying, as I've tried to make the point, we're supposed to be in the image of Christ. His love, his gentleness, his compassion. But don't get hung up on that because we're going to come back to something in just a moment. At the end of this parable or end of this teaching about Zacchaeus, it's not a parable, it's an instance. This is fact. In verse 9 it says, "And Jesus said to him, 'Salvation has come to this house.'" What's that mean? Is he saying that Zacchaeus is saved? John, is your hand? This isn't up. You got to raise your hand this way, not out to the side. Yes, sir.
Well, Jesus is the salvation that has come, to the house. It's the relationship with him that this Zacchaeus is being introduced to, contacted with. That I think Jesus is saying that Zacchaeus is going to have to make a decision.
Zacchaeus isn't saved because of what he just said. I give half of what I've got to the poor. And if I have taken wrongly, I'll give it back fourfold. It'd be very easy from the world's standpoint to go, oh, Zacchaeus is saved because he's a good man. This isn't saying that Zacchaeus is saved. Salvation has come to this house because of the presence of God. Jesus' salvation coming to the presence of all of us. Not that we're saved just because Jesus is here, but salvation is before us because we've got access to the Savior. And it's a very, you could miss that point and think, well, Zacchaeus is saved. No, Zacchaeus is not saved because of what he has just confessed that he does. I give and I'm going to repay. Christ's presence is that salvation. And as we go into the next, what I hate sometimes about the writings is it's in verse 11 it says, now as they heard these things, as if we're at Zacchaeus and now he's saying that Zacchaeus is at the house or he's going to Zacchaeus' house. I don't know the time frame. But now it talks about the 10 minas. So real quick, what's the story? Master gives out 1 to 10 different servants, correct? He goes off, it says, a certain nobleman went to a far country to seek for himself a kingdom and to return. What's verse 14 say?
His citizens hated him and sent an embassy after him, saying, we do not want this man to reign over us.
His citizens hate him. We don't want him to rule. At first glance, why on earth is this in there? What does this have to do with the 10 minas and the servants repaying or serving and doing what they're supposed to do? It kind of seems a little disconnected. Also, I've thrown out to you over the past few weeks that many times when we read the parables, I'm always searching, or I think we in general search to say, okay, this is God, and this is Jesus, and this is us, and all that. And sometimes that's not the case. But in this one, I do want you to allow this to be God or to be Jesus. A certain nobleman went to a far country to receive for himself a kingdom. So we've got the master. He's going to depart for a while because he's got to go take care of business. He's going to receive a kingdom. But while he leaves, he gives his servants a coin, some type of dollar figure. Richard, I don't care the dollar figure amount, but where did they get this? Did they earn it? Free gift, right?
No, it doesn't say that.
What do you mean?
Well, it says he gave us, it says, that he said to them, engage in business until I come. So, they were acting as a money, trying to invest or take care of business in his stead.
Verse 13.
It doesn't say it was a gift.
Okay, it's not a gift okay, I stand corrected on that. What my point was, is it was not theirs. They did not earn it. It was not part of their paycheck. He gave it to them, is what I was saying. He gives them something and says, I want you to take care of business. He made them trustees. Now, if we take this as to God, or take this as Jesus, Jesus has left this world. He's gone to the Father to receive a kingdom. He's sitting at the right hand. And he's left us as trustees with the gift. He doesn't talk about how much the gift is, and I don't want us to get hung up on it. There's this dollar figure, because we each have different gifts. Matt?
It also seems that this is you said you inquired about gate, but his citizens hated him and sent a delegation after him. I'm kind of perplexed with that one myself. It kind of reads a couple ways if you ask me.
Well, I want you to hold on to that thought. Don't get hung up on it now, because I don't know if Jim was here at the point, but I said that there's a word in this passage that I have trouble with, the austere, because it's not in my vocabulary.
What's the word?
The austere, austri,
Where is that?
in verses, I'm reading the New King James. A hard man. What does a hard man mean?
What verse? I'm sorry. Verse 21?
Yes.
My translation says severe.
Severe. The ESV says severe. What does this word mean? Because severe man seems what? Sounds severe, doesn't it? Disciplinarian? What's the word actually mean? Well, this isn't John Wayne. I don't take no bull. This means he's a man of high standards. He is a strict man. He has high expectations. So if this, John,
I have a question. I know you talk about the nobleman being Jesus. Who is the audience in this situation? Because he was talking to the Pharisees at the end of his conversation about Zacchaeus, and now we've shifted into, is it the disciples? Is it everybody? Is it a small group? I'm wondering, who is the audience?
that's a good question. I can't answer who the audience is, but if he is dealing with Zacchaeus, we've got grumbling because of Pharisees around him, and it says, now as they heard this. If it flows, it would be just the Pharisees or the righteous people in if it's the Pharisees. He gives us something, but as he pulls them back in, I always question, where's the other 7? Because we only hear from 3. One man is able to do business or to be entrusted, and he creates tenfold. And then he's blessed with the other wealth or other responsibility. As a younger person, I didn't have much of a problem with this guy that did nothing. I thought, well, let's go to verse 20. Then another came saying, Master, here's your mina. I have kept it, put it away in a handkerchief. Is there anything good we could say about this fella?
He didn't do what he was told to do.
He knew, as you said earlier, it wasn't his to begin with, so he thought he was being entrusted to take care of it, although he missed the word business.
He missed something. But if we wanted to say something good about this man, he didn't go out and I almost said didn't go get drunk. He didn't go do stupid stuff. He wasn't at the local casino. He wasn't just being dumb. On one level, he thought, what's his own words? I feared you. I knew you were an Austrian. You collect where you did not deposit. You reap where you did not sow. On one level, you would think, well, why isn't the man, he at least didn't lose. Sometimes we play not to lose, don't we? But let me ask you a question. Would it be better to do your best and to stumble and fall and lose than do nothing at all? Would you want to go to your master and say, Master, I had it and I tried, but I lost it? This guy was playing it safe. He didn't understand what he was supposed to do. And think about it a lot from the world's standpoint or for a religious standpoint. Not understanding their gift that they received. Or what's the bigger lesson from the world's religious standpoint? Not understanding who their master was. Don?
And you might say that he kept it for himself and then gave it back to him.
He kept it for himself. He gave it back to him, so he was playing it safe. Now, this is not a lesson about money. I don't care what your bank account says. I don't care what your annual salary is. I don't care how much your house is worth or what your car is worth. Let's say your faith. God gives us faith. He gives us talents. He gives us something that we've not earned, something that we've not developed, something that we've not built. What would cause us to play it safe? Fear of losing it. Okay, so fear of losing it. What else would cause us to play it safe? Lack of understanding. Is there anything else that would cause us to play it safe?
Fear.
We said, what kind of fear though? We got fear of losing it, lack of understanding, laziness. Maybe just not understanding the potential of what that gift really could do.
Or not having the faith to think you can handle it.
And he feared the one who gave it to him. Yeah. Because he knew he was tough. He was a severe man. And he was going to want an account.
So now, he says, out of your own mouth, I'm going to judge you. I will judge you, you wicked servant. You knew I was an Austrian man. Collecting where I did not deposit, reaping where I did not sow. If we think about that faith in the church, faith in Christ, just the growth of the world, God's going to reap worldwide where God hasn't necessarily been. Who's he expecting to do the business for him? Us. John?
He expects our efforts to multiply his investment.
So if we Are we more like the 10 mina man or the 1 mina man or the no mina man? We need to understand that our God is not a severe God, but He is a God of high standards and high expectations, and there's a very big difference. He will reap where He has not sown, and He will collect. We need to be willing to risk things. Now, I'm not saying stupidly, but we can't be as Christians kind of like, let's play it safe. We've got to go. We've got to try. We've got to work and have the faith in what God has done for us and what He is going to provide for us. Because in verse 27, well, let's go back to verse 26. No, let's back up to verse 24. And He said to those who stood by, take the mina from him. Okay, that's pretty just God. Give it to the guy that's got 10. Mine has it in parentheses or brackets. But he's got 10. Matt?
Doesn't say that.
What?
He had 10 servants. Gave him 10 minas. So basically, minas is a unit of measurement. So basically, each one adds 1. And it could have been a power line based on mina. I'll pronounce that. He didn't give them 10 each.
No, I did not say He gave him 10 each. He gave 1 to 10 people, but one man turned his 1 into 10. Now He takes the 1 from the fella who did nothing and says, I want you to give it to the guy that's got 10. And then what happens? Some bellyache, he's already got 10. Maybe another lesson that I stand.
You know, I'm not God, and I don't profess to be God. I don't want to be God. He's my servant. He's my master. But I'll say this, that sometimes, you know, when you see rules, and you see readings and stuff like that, in some ways it would be better, my heart kind of said this, it would be good if it would have said, give the 10 to him and follow him, you know, so he could learn, produce like the man did 10. But it doesn't say that.
Sometimes we would like it to be that black and white.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm not saying this about you, we're dumb people.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're 2,000 years away from this.
We need rules to a certain degree. But He doesn't give us everything because He expects us to think. And He expects us to dig, and He expects us to explore. My gut reaction would have kind of been, why give it to him? He's already got. Give it to me, I've only got 2.
It's a strict business decision, that's exactly what you would do. One of your employees is succeeding at that level, 10 times the level of some of the others, twice the level of the others. That person that generated 10 from one, that's where you put that money.
So Jim's saying as a business owner, that makes perfect sense. But also the lesson is this. The business owner or the master, it's his to do whatever he so chooses. We also have parables where some are invited in the field in the morning for a wage. Some say at noon, some say at 3, some say at 6, and some at the end. And they all get paid the same. It is not ours to worry about what God does. It is ours to worry about, are we serving the master? And that's a hard lesson. It's a very hard lesson, kind of even going back into Zacchaeus, because it's the Pharisees who go, he's with the sinner, to remind myself I'm the sinner. I also have to remind myself over and over that my salvation is between me and God. You can't save me. I can't save you. But we can work together to strengthen and encourage and help each other all get saved together. So there's a relationship, that the importance of the body and the family, because there are some that are struggling and they need encouragement. There are some that can be picked off easily by Satan, and we need to be there to hold their hand and pull them back. But ultimately, as my decision, I have to walk with God. Richard, do you still need to make a point?
I'll hold my questions till I got something else I want to say when I get down there.
Okay. Anything else on the 10 minas and the servants here? Brandon?
Just a little observation. I think it's in Luke, in this chapter, one of these verses, he calls him, if I'm not mistaken, a wicked or slothful servant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a wicked servant, 22.
Yes.
And I kind of disagree, I guess, as far as like this not, I know the parable is not directly about money, but it comports with some of the other things we learned about money in the Bible too. For example, in Proverbs 13 and 22, it says, good people leave an inheritance to their grandchildren, but sinners will pass it to the godly. And I know this wasn't none of their money no way, but you still have that same example or precedent here where he's giving what he had to the person who, by contrast, you could say, was more righteous with what they had. He's getting what, the slothful, this wicked servant wasted.
I'm sure I missed a little bit because I got distracted in my head. You said that in verse
22.
22. Well,
22, he says, you wicked servant, the king will, your own words will condemn you. And he goes on forth to say, if you knew I'm a hard man who takes what isn't mine and harvests crops I didn't plant, why did you not deposit my money in the bank? Do something with it,
do something with it.
And that ends up, what ends up having to be done with it, the master has done with it, is he gives it to the person who already had 10. And is the other, I guess you call him the kind of interrupting servant points out, like, he's confused by this, but master, he already has 10. But again, I think the first verse I thought of was back in Proverbs 13 and 23 or 22, which says, good people leave an inheritance to their grandchildren, but the sinners will pass it to the godly. He was a wicked, he was considered in this sense in past.
When you started off, you said you disagree. And my joking sarcasm said, be careful what you disagree with, because God says you're a wicked servant.
Exactly.
Now, I want you also to think about this. I asked the questions earlier in class about, can we say anything good about this man? He played it safe. Sometimes in the world we might play something safe, but what is he called for playing it safe?
Sin.
Wicked.
Wicked, yeah.
That's harsh. You wicked people. Well, I have to get with you. We wicked people. Sometimes if we play it safe, one of my points is that we might kind of justify or think that that's okay. But this master doesn't say, okay, he calls them wicked. That's pretty harsh. For the sake of time, let's move forward. Well, no, we got one more point here. Verse 26. For I say to you that everyone who has will be given, and from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. But bring those enemies of mine who did not want me to reign over them and slay them before me.
That's austere.
That's austere.
That's harsh.
That's harsh. The religious world, the world itself. If this parable could represent Jesus going to his Father and receiving the kingdom, and he's left us here as his servants, and we have our talents to use to build his kingdom. And the world that does not want to follow him says, we don't want him as our master. The just master comes back and says, the ones who don't want to follow me, bring them before me and I'll slaughter them. We need to know our God. He is not a mean, vengeful God, but He is an exact God. He says what He means, and He means what He says. And if you don't believe me, you look at history from the beginning of time. He has bent over backwards to serve His people, to love His people, to give His people a way of escape, but He grows to a point where can be impatient. He's always willing to accept us on His terms, not on ours. Yes, Garth.
I don't know if you made this distinction or not, but it's not the person who had one-minded that was complaining. It was the crowd that was complaining.
Yes, I noticed that.
You didn't tell the person who wanted to give it back or give it to the person who didn't. You told the bystanders to take it from him and give it to him.
Right.
So, in other words, being said there, he was reluctant to give it up, or what was happening?
If you don't hear Garth, what he's talking about in verse 24 and 25 is that when the master, the ones that were complaining said, but he's got 10, it wasn't the one that had one saying, no, don't let me, I can't let go of it. It was the others that were listening. And that would be a lesson within the church or with the fellow brothers and sisters. I shouldn't necessarily have a problem when God is blessing you or giving things to you. I should stand alone on what I have done before God. And that is an important lesson. Triumphal entry. Well, Lee, I would encourage you, as Brandon pointed out, to go back and listen to a past sermon that we get wrapped up in this. And, I've wondered about it for this cult. One, go if somebody questions you why you're loosening it. Say the Lord has sent or the Lord needs it. I would assume that God is working within them. Somebody comes in and loosens my colt. Hey, the Lord needs it. Yeah, right. So who's the Lord? Whether they knew the Lord or not, or God's just working it out within His plan. But the point is, and I hadn't heard this until one of our classes recently, and it may have been that Palm Sunday, is that a warrior king, a conquering king, would have come in on his horse after battle. But a peaceful king, not after battle, would have come in sitting on his colt. And that's one of the distinctions here. And it does bring it out in the text when you go later on down. When he was drawing near, verse 37, to ascend a Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of disciples, now this is the crowd, began to rejoice and praise with a loud voice for the almighty works that they had seen. So this is the crowd's response. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. So the crowd, the audience, is acknowledging Him as King. So that gives weight also to the fact that they recognize the symbolism of this king that's sitting on the colt, coming into the city. The second part of that verse 38 says, peace in heaven and glory in the highest, indicating also that concept of that He's not reigning as a victorious warrior king, but in this peaceful situation. Verse 39, though, the Pharisees called to Him from the crowd. So can you imagine, picture this. We've got Jesus sitting on this colt, coming into town, nice and peaceful. The people are praising Him. We've got some folks over here. Master, teacher, rebuke your people. Tell them to shut up. And what's Jesus' response? If they were silent, even the rocks would cry out. Think of the beauty of that. What's He saying?
Well, the earth probably would have shook,
The significance of what was happening at that time. Christ coming in, fulfilling the plan of God, coming to the point for that once and for all sacrifice for sin, the establishment of the church. Everything that's happening is so great, God's plan. If my people don't acknowledge it, They didn't understand the significance of what was happening right before them, that even the rocks would cry out. The stones would immediately cry. Brandon?
I think they had to have known the fulfillment of the prophecy of, I think it was Zechariah 9:9. Rejoice, O people of Zion, shout in triumph, O people of Jerusalem. Look, the king is coming to you. He is righteous and victorious, yet he is humble, riding on a donkey's colt. And, the people who already profess their belief and, listen to Christ's words as him being the Messiah, by the time, this Palm Sunday rolls around, that's why they're shouting out, from all the things they had seen and followed seen.
This Messiah was not something new. They've been looking for him. They've been expecting him, and they're still not fully understanding everything.
Some are, though, I think.
Some are, but, and I know I'm over time, but I want you to be patient with me for a few minutes. But he weeps when he comes into the city. Why is he weeping? He's understanding the significance of what he's doing. He knows what he's about to face, his death, burial, and resurrection. They should understand the kingdom coming. They should understand the salvation. They're missing it. You can imagine the heartbrokenness of Christ himself. If they had just understood what was happening before them, they should be so joyous, so happy, but they're not getting it. Verse 44, because you did not know the time of your visitation. They're just not getting it. There's so many lessons there, and then I need to finish up for the sake of time. He clears the temple. I don't know if this is a movie that I've seen or what, or if it's just my imagination. But if there were a temple and a man were clearing it out, what kind of imagery comes to your mind? This is the class participation part. Would he come in, hey now, get that table out of here. We sometimes, I think of a madman coming in, a maniac. Yeah, have you ever seen that kind of a movie? He comes in, he grabs it, and he just. But if Jesus had done that, now I don't think for any minute that Jesus was some soft little wimpy guy. I believe he was a man. I think he acted like a man. But I don't think he came in as a crazy lunatic. And the reason I wanted to make this point is this. If he had come in as a crazy lunatic, and if we were at home and I had a few of those plastic tables down, like we got downstairs, those are lightweight, right? I could flip those easy. What would you all think of me if I walked in a room and I was angry and I started flipping over tables? He's lost it. Look at what's being said about him. He went into the temple and began to drive out those. Well, first of all, if we were a madman or a lunatic, we'd probably be calling the cops to subdue him and hold him down. Drive out those who bought and sold, saying to them, it is written, my house is a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. And he was teaching daily. But the chief priests, the scribes, and the leaders of the people sought to destroy them. Would they have let just total moron, maniac, madmen loose in the temple? What was the temple for them? It's a house, it's God's house, it's where they would sacrifice, they approached God. It was a sacred place, it was a center of their culture. It was the center of their relationship or their center with God. So if he had come in as just this blasted, blooming idiot, throwing stuff around, screaming, ranting and raving and crazy, they would have gotten him out of there fast. But he's teaching daily, so they're allowing him to. The leaders can't do anything to him. Now, if somebody came in this room crazy, I think there's 4 or 5 people that would be on top of him and possibly even be with their concealed carry, may shoot him. We wouldn't have that, would we? They wouldn't have had it either. They knew they were wrong. They knew who he was. And they were afraid because what does it say about the rest of the people? They were sitting and listening to everything that Jesus fed them.
So it's really setting the stage for his death because they couldn't do it in the daytime in front of everybody.
All of this is pointing towards what's getting ready to happen. They couldn't get rid of this man. It's not that he was a madman and they needed to subdue him. They needed the police to lock him up. He was teaching in such a way that the people were just, give us more. This is what we've been looking for. This is the fulfillment of the law. They were understanding things. Richard? And then we've got to go.
Well, he has one week to live on the one just like you said before. They couldn't get their heads around the fact that when you hear the word kingdom, they were always raised to think physical kingdom.
Yes. They missed that this was not an earthly kingdom. It was not a king, a warrior king, but a kingdom was set in heaven, and he knew what was happening. Thank you, guys.